Good morning, everyone. Archbishop Richard Gagnon here, speaking to you from the Catholic Center in Winnipeg, and this is our Friday report. Thank you very much for joining us today. It is September 23rd. The month of September is going very quickly indeed. So I just want to mention a few things, and I have a short interview at the end of the Friday report today with our Synod coordinator. First of all, about the pandemic. Now, we all look at the pandemic as sort of past and that sort of thing to one degree or another, but certainly there are lingering effects of the pandemic, and that very much differs from community to community. I'm just mentioning it today because I come into contact with it directly as I travel around southwestern Manitoba throughout the Archdiocese of Winnipeg. Many parishes are pretty well close to the pre-pandemic numbers that they had, before the pandemic, and the congregations are coming back very well. I've noticed that, but in other places, not quite the same. And there's a certain hardship there in terms of the parish support and these kinds of questions. I think for some people, there's certain fear of being in crowds. That's quite possible. In other cases, there could be people who have become used to the live streaming and are slow coming back that way. Mind you, a number of parishes continue to live stream in order to reach out to those who are shut-ins or who are in nursing homes. And some communities, particularly in the rural areas, have experienced a certain change in the demographics. I'm told by people in certain rural areas and certain rural communities that there has been a lot of retirements lately, and people not retiring in their communities, but moving closer to medical facilities, as you'd find in the city. And there's those who have moved away from other reasons. So in the rural areas, there has been a certain demographic effect. The majority are coming back, but still with this minority of people who are reluctant to come back for various reasons, and maybe some I haven't even mentioned today, has provided a certain difficulty and challenge as we continue to rebuild our communities. But people are certainly determined to move forward, and they very much enjoy coming together as a congregation to worship together. I've been to a number of communities for different celebrations. For example, delayed confirmations because of the pandemic. I confirmed a small group in Vernon for that very reason. And just recently I was up in Arborg, and there was a brother and sister there that I confirmed, and their confirmation was delayed a couple of years actually. And so it was a very special celebration. Speaking of that particular case, I normally ask the pastor at the beginning of the service who was responsible for forming these young people in their faith. And I had forgotten to do that. So at the end of Mass, I said to the pastor publicly, and who's responsible for catechizing these young people and preparing them for confirmation? And the parents stood up and said, "We are." I thought that was beautiful. They're not homeschoolers. The kids go to public school at Arborg, but the parents took it on to make sure that the children were well formed for confirmation, and I knew they were just by my conversation with the young people. And I pointed out that essentially this is a good lesson for us, because the parents are the first teachers of their children in the way of the faith. Having said that, in parish communities, there are catechists who assist the parents. Their role is to assist the parents, not to replace the parents in their catechetical preparation for the young people. And so I thought that was a good reminder to us of the centrality of the role of the parents in catechesis. And then I had an opposite experience the other night when I went to a large city parish, St. Peter's, for the opening of the catechetical year, and there were 1,000 people present at Mass. and that included 700 young people in catechism. Their sponsors, their parents were there as well. And that just shows you by the number of volunteers how this special vocation of teaching the young people is so very important within parish communities. But again, it is a help to the parents who are the first teachers of their children in the ways of the faith. Now, at the end of September, on September the 30th, we have our second National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And that is on the Friday. And this, of course, provides an opportunity for people to recollect and to remember the very important reality in Canada of relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. It's a time in which one can reflect on the effects of residential school and, yes, the effects of the colonial past in Canada, which has been played out in many countries throughout the world, but we see it on our own doorstep here, and to reflect on those factors, but also on the importance of rights, of human rights, of respect for one another, and of partnering with one another in building our society. And so on that day, hopefully, we can build upon a little bit the fruits of the delegation that went to Rome just recently, and also of the Holy Father's visit to Canada. So a lot has been happening, and we are encouraged as people of God to pray for one another, to pray for reconciliation, to forgive our neighbors, and to begin to roll up our sleeves and work as best we can in that important work of building up our community in Canada in a new way of relationships. And of course, our Solidarity Fund is one of the practical ways that we are doing that within the Archdiocese of Winnipeg. I will be celebrating Mass at the Indigenous Parish, Kateri Tekakwitha in Winnipeg on Friday morning on the 30th. And there'll be a ceremony, a lighting of the fire, the sacred fire, prior to the celebration of the Eucharist. And so that's what's happening. So I encourage you in some way to reflect on that day. You may want to attend some of the activities in Winnipeg that mark the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. So I have a special guest today that is someone who has been here before in the Friday Report, Linda Chiupka. Linda is our Synod Implementation Coordinator, and she was very much involved in the whole recent series of events in gathering information from parishioners to feed into the Universal Synod, the International Synod in Rome, which will be held a year from now. So I want to welcome Linda to our Friday Report. Well, Linda, welcome once again to the Friday Report, and coming via Zoom all the way from around Brandon, Manitoba. And so just wanted to share with the people today on our Friday Report a little bit about the Synod. And Linda, you were involved, of course, in coordinating the feedback from the listening circles, listening sessions, and the survey in the Archdiocese of Winnipeg. It's our contribution to the whole process of this Synod to be held in Rome next year. But also, too, you were one of the key people involved in taking the feedback from all of the Western dioceses and putting that together in a report. Mm-hmm. And so you did that, and then following that feedback, all 4 regions of Canada submitted their reports, and it was synthesized into a national report, which went to Rome. And the national report is on the website under the title Universal Synod, and also on our website is the work you did for the diocese, and it's under the Synod title pull down thing on the website, and people can have a look at that. So Today, I just wanted to talk to you. You want to talk to us, share with us a little bit about that process, both in the Archdiocese and Western Canada. So it's great to talk to you again. So having said that, maybe you want to lead us off a little bit and explain to us a little bit what happened and what some of the highlights are.
Sure. And you should mention too that you were instrumental in working on the synthesis for the national survey. So the Archdiocese of Winnipeg was well represented in this whole process.
We were, Linda, and I think that one of the reasons why that is because, you don't want to thump your chest or anything like that, but we were one of the few dioceses in Canada that actually had a full-fledged synod, which completed in 2018 here, and still grappling with the implementation of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's reflected in the responses that we got. And I'll get into a little bit about that more when I talk about Western Canada. But we had, overall, our responses were very good. I think people really already felt as though they were listened to and they had an opportunity to speak out because of our own synod. So the responses we got were overwhelmingly positive. I was a little bit worried that people might have synod fatigue, so that maybe they wouldn't participate in this Universal Synod as they had in the first one. But we had 756 people that we could count. Some of the parishes that submitted their report, they gave estimates or they didn't give numbers, but from the numbers that we could ascertain, I came up with 756 people who responded, and that was really within the ballpark of all of the other dioceses as well. So that was good, and it was good because it was coming at a time when there were still restrictions at the beginning. When the synod was called, we weren't able to meet, or if we could meet, it was very small numbers. So we kind of had to delay the listening sessions until things opened up a bit. And then, of course, we had the online survey as well. And some parishes made use of the printed copy to have people fill it in, because some people just hadn't made their way back to church yet. So overall, we had 756 people that responded, and we had participation from all 6 of our deaneries and from so many of our parishes. We've got, I think, 88 parishes in the diocese, and 61% of them are represented either through the in-person listening sessions or the hard copy that they submitted or online. So very good participation.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize again that, as you just said, the numbers who participated, good numbers, represented a cross-section of the whole diocese. It wasn't just Winnipeg centric.
Right.
When I travel around the diocese and talk to some people in these small rural communities, they tell me about their experience either of the survey or the in-person or the via internet gathering of listening sessions. So that's great.
Yeah. When you break it down, the responses were 45% rural, 48% urban, and the other people either didn't know what deanery they fell in, or they were responding from outside our archdiocese altogether. So it was a really good, and I know the Brandon is urban kind of thing, but we're pretty rural still. Between inside Winnipeg and outside Winnipeg, it was really pretty even. The other thing was we had a good response from all age groups. We had 15% of the people were under 30, so that's good. And from all walks of life, we had lay people, clergy, religious. One stat that I found really interesting was the number of people who responded that were never married. So we had 25% of the people who responded were single. And I thought that was very, very interesting. I don't necessarily know what it means, but there are a lot of single people that are involved in parish life and were interested enough. And the other thing that I found very interesting too is the number of people who responded either with the listening sessions as opposed to the online. I would have thought, especially with so many people in the younger age groups, that we would have had a much higher response in the online survey, but people, I think, really responded to that opportunity to get together with their, co-parishioners and do it together as a community. And just speaking of the small parishes, one that just really struck me is the little parishes of Tutses Rurton, who had their entire congregation do a listening session together. And it was, I think they had something like 13, but they were all there. So yeah, even the very small parishes had very good participation.
And I'm really thankful to the pastors and the parish leadership for taking us on and rather short timeline to get this happening, and they're very grateful for that. And a comment on the single people, unmarried people who responded. I don't know if that indicates a younger demographic. Are we talking about more involvement of young adults? I don't know, but it seems to me that to some degree, that would be the case here.
And that has kind of pastoral implications too. When you think, are there activities that we do that are targeted towards couples? Are we doing enough for single people? So that's something to think of in pastoral planning.
Excellent, excellent. So maybe we could just look at fairly quickly, if we could, some of the highlights.
Right.
We've gone over some of the stats, the graphs that are included in the report, which is kind of interesting to look at. I encourage people to do that. But some of the highlights in the content as a result of this.
Yeah, well, one of the things that really stood out, it was sort of organized by the same themes as the questions, which of course we got from Rome. So the questions we asked were based on what the Vatican was looking for. And the first topic was companions on the journey. And there, the theme that really stood out was the value of a domestic and spiritual family in the formative years. So many people said that their influences early in life were their parent, which came in first. What came in second was their priest, and then their grandparents, and then of course other relatives, or godparents, that kind of thing. Teachers, especially those who were taught in Catholic schools, they got a mention. And so of course we don't have very many places right now where you can be taught by sisters and have the priest in your school, but that was something that was very important in the early life of people. And what was interesting when it came to the question, who are you journeying with now? I think the second highest one was their spouse. So there's a real testament to marriage when you can journey in your spiritual life with your spouse. I thought that was good too. A lot of people, because this was happening during COVID really colored the responses in the sense that people were still feeling that isolation. And so many people expressed a real gratitude for what their parishes were doing to try to keep people connected during that time. And that came out very strong. Of course, others also spoke of the loneliness that they felt, or the frustration at not being able to do their regular ministerial work in the parish. Hopefully that's coming to be behind us, and I'm waiting to see what happens this winter. Hopefully we'll have a good winter and we won't have to go through those restrictions again, but they did weigh heavily on people.
They weighed heavily on people, but they also highlighted things that are important even outside the pandemic. The reality of loneliness in society, the importance of paying attention and greater attention to the vulnerable people within our own communities, the elderly and those who are sick, and also of our youth. So even though it was accented during the pandemic, it certainly are lessons that we need to continue to keep in mind.
Absolutely. And I think people realized how much they valued that community that comes with their parish that might not have been on their radar before, but when they didn't have it, boy, did they ever notice it. Yeah, so definitely I think people really became aware of what it's like to live isolated, as so many people do every day, so that was definitely something that stood out. in terms of listening and speaking out, like I said, most the people who responded said that they felt that their parish did a good job to encourage dialogue. And again, I think this is a reflection of the fact that we had just been through a synod, so people have had that mindset, and so there's been more opportunities for them to speak together. The people who indicated there was a bit of a problem, sometimes it had to do with language barriers. Sometimes it had to do with not having a resident priest. Or a big one that you might not think about in an urban community is just a lack of physical space in some of these smaller rural parishes. They don't have a meeting room. They don't have a hall, so it's very difficult for them to get together and meet.
Yeah, I had
And then, of course, if they don't have a resident priest, then yeah.
I was going to say it's very true. Last Sunday, for example, in Fisher Branch, after the Mass, I was present there, and there was a little social at the entrance to the church because there was no hall.
Yeah.
So people put their goodies along the wall there, and the coffee and whatnot. That's the only place they could really gather. It's very true.
That's right. That's right. And no bathrooms, so you don't want to gather for too long. Yeah, and when it came to, who are those that we could do a better job with, there was a wide variety of responses, including the poor, of course, young people, those who have left the church, those struggling with issues regarding either sexuality or family dynamics or poverty, also the elderly and disabled. When it comes to the next category, celebration and mission, it was really nice to see that most people indicated that they understood what was going on at Mass, and that Mass and personal prayer played an important role in their life. So that was good to see. In terms of what would make them better able to participate in the mission of the church, they said more and better catechesis, a personal invitation, and an opportunity to grow as a parish. And that request for more and better catechesis, that reflects really what we saw in our own synod. The number one thing is we need to have better formed and educated laity. So there's certainly a commonality there. When it came to dialogue in the church and society and the question of ecumenism, the majority of people either said they didn't answer or they didn't really know what was being done in the church. Those who did know listed Bible study, the public way of the cross, March for Life, Week of Christian Unity. So when it came to mind, it's like, oh, this is what they're referring to. They had a list of things they were doing, but other people didn't really know. When it came to how we could better form ourselves in synodality, most people already felt invited to participate in developing the goals of the parish. And again, I think this is a reflection of the fact that we've been talking about synodality for so long, and people have had an opportunity to contribute. What they did express was a frustration sometimes of the inability to get other people involved, and other people in the parish. And there are always going to be people who just want to come to church and go home, and they don't want to be involved. And we feel this need at times to involve everybody, but not everybody always wants that, right? So that was a bit of a frustration for people too, especially in the smaller parishes where they have maybe older congregations and they're looking down the line and they're saying, we can't do this forever. We're not going to be here forever. And who's going to come along behind us? So there's some frustration there. And then when it came to the question, what is the Holy Spirit asking us to do or to do differently? There were a variety of answers. One of the top answers was hold fast to the authentic sacred teachings of the church. That was a big one. Be more Christ-like, be doers rather than just hearers of the word. People asked for more education and teaching on how can we accompany those who are not living in conformity with or full communion with the church. How can we do that diplomatically and kindly and be welcoming? How can we do that? Of course, while this was going on, we also had, news about problems with reconciliation and that kind of thing. So that played a big part on people's minds. And so a lot of people were saying we have to keep working on our relationship with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. That was a big one too. Also because people want that sense of community, especially after being deprived of it for so long. They were saying we need to do more social gatherings. We need to invite the community in, not only our own regular parishioners, but the other people too, the people who have fallen away, the people who may not have fallen away totally, but they've lost the habit of going to church, so how can we involve them? How can we involve them in things that are just fun and just community building? And then how can we engage our youth, and make them feel as though they're more contributing members of the parish? And finally, a request to continue with listening sessions and these opportunities to dialogue.
Excellent, Linda. You're listening to what you said. I find it very encouraging that there is a real strong core faith, and people are concerned about formation, or you're concerned about being faithful to the church, teachings of the church handed to us by Christ, and at the same time we recognize the challenges that we have, but we've passed through a number of years of real challenge. Then we have the question of the reconciliation and all of that. So people are aware of that and are touched by it, but they recognize the importance of being authentic to our faith. And that's very encouraging to hear. And when you mention that they feel that their spiritual life is very important, I do think the pandemic had something to do with that, because we stressed a lot during the pandemic the importance of spiritual communion, the importance of family prayer, and as the family is domestic church, and some of that I think has sunk in, and so it's some good results there.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Just one thing that kind of struck me, and there's things that we can take out of it. There's things that we can work on too. And one of the things that I noticed that I think is something we might want to think about is when it came to who's influenced your life in faith and who's your current influence now, or who's your supporter now. Godparents were really low on the list. And so I think there's a real need to talk about the role of godparents, and the not just at the time of the sacrament is received, but throughout the life, and try to nurture that relationship between the child and their godparent.
Excellent point. When I do the confirmations, I always point out the sponsors and their role, but it goes beyond just the sacramental celebration itself. Of course, it goes well beyond that. That's a very good and helpful observation. Well, always in our Friday report, and our time is limited. Thank you for giving us this bird's eye view of the Synod and what you were involved in. And again, the National Synthesis is available online under the Universal Synod, and the work that Linda has done can be found in the report under the title Synod. It's a pull down on the website. I can't talk about Facebook and things like that because I don't understand that, but I do understand the website. So thank you, Linda, for joining us.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
Well, I'm thankful for Linda for taking time on this Friday report, and what she had to say was very encouraging and enlightening. The mere fact of over 700 people participating in this Universal Synod exercise we had in the Archdiocese of Winnipeg. So thank you one and all for joining us for our Friday report. Next week, I'm at the plenary for the bishops in Cornwall, and I'm not too sure whether or not we'll be having a Friday report next week, but we'll let you know through our communications of the Archdiocese, and to see if that will happen next week. So thank you once again, all of you. The Lord be with you, and may he keep you safe in his love, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.